I heard you were really excited about watching the recent Godfather reunion. I wanted to go too, but it ended up being streamed on Facebook Live instead. Did you get a chance to see it? I didn't. Still, that kind of nostalgia fits perfectly with the strange and dramatic story surrounding Alec Baldwin, especially after everything that unfolded recently. In July 2024, Alec Baldwin stood in a courtroom facing the possibility of spending 18 months in prison. The judge calmly read out the charges while cameras captured every second. Then something happened that no one expected. Within just a few hours, the entire case collapsed. People thought that was the end of it, but it was only the beginning. In January 2025, Baldwin shocked even those closest to him by filing a lawsuit against the very people who had tried to put him behind bars. What followed revealed a much deeper story, one that showed there was a lot Baldwin had been carrying quietly for years. This became the final chapter of a Hollywood story no one saw coming. Alec Baldwin did not grow up surrounded by glamour or movie sets. His life started far away from red carpets and flashing cameras. He was born Alexander Ray Baldwin III on April 3, 1958, in Amityville, New York. At that time, Amityville was just a regular town, years before it became famous for the horrific DeFeo murders that turned its name into a symbol of horror. When Alec was still young, his parents moved the family a few miles away to the Nassau Shores area of Massapequa. This is where 6 Baldwin children grew up packed inside a modest home. Life there was loud, busy, and full of pressure. Rules came from church, discipline came from school, and competition came from sports. Long before fame entered his life, Alec was already used to noise, arguments, and expectations. Alec was the oldest child. After him came Daniel in 1960, William in 1963, and Stephen in 1966. All of them grew up under the same roof, not knowing that one day the Baldwin name would be known around the world because of 4 brothers who all became actors. Their family history went back hundreds of years to John Howland, a passenger on the Mayflower. That made Alec a 13th-generation American. It was an interesting contrast, deep colonial roots paired with a future that would play out under bright city lights and constant public attention. His father, Alexander Ray Baldwin Jr., once dreamed of becoming a lawyer but chose a more stable path. He became a high school history teacher and a tough football coach at Massapequa High School. Students feared Coach Baldwin because discipline was everything to him, but they also respected him. He taught American history as if it was alive and dangerous, like the Vietnam War draft could suddenly pull you in. At home, money was always tight. Taking extra jobs was normal, and stress never really left the house. Alec's mother, Carol Newcomb Baldwin, balanced her husband's strictness with strong emotions. She cried easily, argued fiercely, and never backed down from a fight. Years later, after being diagnosed with breast cancer in 1990, she turned that same determination into action by starting a foundation to support cancer research. Together, Alec's parents created an intense environment that shaped him early. He grew up knowledgeable about politics and history, loud when speaking, quick to react, and unafraid to argue. Looking back, it's easy to see where his temper began. When Alec finished high school in 1976, he believed he had his future planned. He imagined a life in Washington, not Hollywood. He enrolled at George Washington University and studied political science, already thinking ahead to law school. Georgetown was the dream. He even ran for student body president, but he lost. That small defeat bothered him more than he liked to admit. Money was still an issue, so when he moved to New York, he took whatever work he could find. One job had him clearing tables at Studio 54. While celebrities danced and drugs floated openly through the air, Alec worked quietly on the edges, watching it all but not fully part of it. Around this time, people close to him noticed something. Alec had an uncanny ability to imitate classic actors like James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. Friends encouraged him to audition for acting programs. At first, he did it quietly, without telling the people who still believed he was heading for a courtroom instead of a stage. Something inside him was shifting, even if he wasn't ready to admit it yet. In 1979, that shift became permanent. Alec transferred from George Washington University to New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. Law school disappeared from his plans, replaced entirely by acting. Manhattan pulled him in completely. He trained at NYU and also at the Lee Strasberg Theatre Institute, where method acting pushed students to dig deep into their emotions. Teachers demanded tears on command, deeper feelings, and painful memories brought to the surface. While his acting career began moving quickly, his education did not. Alec started working professionally in the early 1980s, first on the soap opera The Doctors from 1980 to 1982, and then on stage. Despite this early success, he did not actually complete his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree until 1994. By the time he finally received his diploma, he had already starred in major films like Beetlejuice and The Hunt for Red October. He returned to NYU as a well-known actor just to finish the paperwork. As Alec's career grew in the late 1980s, his success began to affect his entire family. One by one, his brothers followed him into acting. Daniel found steady work on television. William landed film roles, including Backdraft in 1991. Stephen entered movies in 1986 and later appeared in The Usual Suspects in 1995. By 2008, all four Baldwin brothers were on television at the same time. Alec starred in 30 Rock, William appeared on Dirty Sexy Money, and Daniel and Stephen showed up on reality TV. The media started referring to them collectively as the Baldwin brothers, treating them like a single brand. Late-night hosts joked about which brother mattered most and which one had messed up. Beneath the jokes was a mix of pride and resentment. Sharing success is never simple when it's tied to family. Even early in his career, people noticed that Alec Baldwin brought intensity everywhere he worked. On The Doctors, he argued about how lines should be delivered. On Knots Landing, he pushed writers to make his character darker and more complex. In theatre, he openly challenged directors, fiercely protecting rehearsal time. Some people admired his dedication, while others feared his temper. He questioned authority and constantly pushed for more depth. These traits existed long before tabloids turned his outbursts into headlines. The Doctors became his training ground. From August 20, 1980, through 1982, Alec played Billy Aldrich in about 28 episodes. Soap operas move fast, with 5 episodes a week and pages of dialogue learned overnight. Sometimes he had to memorize 20 or 30 lines per scene with almost no rehearsal. Alec later described it as boot camp. Learn fast, hit the emotion, and move on. By the age of 24, he had acted in hundreds of scenes and learned how to carry a story under pressure. That confidence led him into primetime television. In 1984, he joined Knots Landing as Joshua Rush. Over roughly 40 episodes, his character transformed from a shy and deeply religious young man into someone obsessive and dangerous. The writers gradually pushed the character into darker territory, and Alec followed without hesitation. Viewers saw how easily he could switch from gentle to terrifying in a single close-up. The image stuck. He became known as handsome but intense. While television paid the bills, Alec's passion for theatre kept growing. In 1986, at about 28 years old, he made his Broadway debut in Joe Orton's play Loot. Critics noticed his sharp timing and how naturally he moved from TV to live theatre. 6 years later, in 1992, he played Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire and earned a Tony Award nomination. That recognition mattered deeply to him. It proved he was not just another TV actor visiting Broadway. He believed he truly belonged there. Casting directors began to see a clear pattern in his performances. He brought charm mixed with danger, attraction paired with threat. Film opportunities followed. In 1988 alone, Alec appeared in 5 major movies, including Beetlejuice, Working Girl, Married to the Mob, and Talk Radio. Again and again, he played men who drew people in while making them uneasy. This became his signature. Beetlejuice marked a major turning point. Released in 1988, the film cast Alec as Adam Maitland, a mild-mannered man who dies in a car accident and returns as a confused ghost trapped in Tim Burton's strange world alongside Michael Keaton's chaotic performance. Alec served as the emotional center of the film. With a budget of about $15 million, Beetlejuice earned around $75 million in the United States and ran endlessly on VHS and cable throughout the 1990s. Alec proved he could anchor a strange studio film without overpowering it. 2 years later, his career reached another level. On March 2, 1990, The Hunt for Red October was released. Alec played CIA analyst Jack Ryan opposite Sean Connery. The film turned a complex Tom Clancy novel into a tense Cold War thriller. It cost about $30 million to make and earned more than $200 million worldwide. Critics praised Alec for playing Jack Ryan as intelligent and nervous rather than fearless. At 31, he looked like the next big franchise star. Then, suddenly, it was gone. Alec did not return for the sequels. Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger went to Harrison Ford instead. In his memoir, Alec later said the studio betrayed him, negotiating behind his back and using his Broadway commitment as an excuse. Losing the Jack Ryan role stayed with him for years. He believed it changed the direction of his entire career. In 1992, Alec created another unforgettable moment in Glengarry Glen Ross. He appeared for just one scene, about 7 minutes long. That was all it took. Writer David Mamet wrote the monologue specifically for the film. Alec stormed into the office scene and delivered the now famous speech about closing deals and how coffee was only for closers. That single performance became legendary and is still shared today as a symbol of ruthless ambition. Alec Baldwin met Kim Basinger in 1990 on the set of The Marrying Man, a film that was tense even before filming began. The movie was released in 1991, but long before that, studio executives were already unhappy. Filming ran longer than planned, costs kept rising, and crew members whispered about constant delays. Many of those delays were blamed on what was happening off-camera. Alec and Kim were falling in love, and their relationship slowly took over the production. Disney grew furious as the budget ballooned far beyond expectations. Deadlines were missed, and the film gained a reputation as a nightmare to make. Despite the chaos, their relationship continued. After playing lovers on screen, they became lovers in real life. The tabloids focused more on their romance than the movie itself. When the film finally reached theaters, it underperformed badly and failed to justify its massive cost. While the movie faded from memory, Alec gained something else in the industry. Quietly and firmly, he was labeled as difficult. That reputation, built from a mix of romance, ego, and constant pressure, followed Alec Baldwin straight into the 1990s. At the very moment when his career seemed ready to reach even greater heights, his personal life became louder and more complicated. His relationship with Kim Basinger only intensified the spotlight on him. On August 19, 1993, Baldwin and Basinger were married in Griffin, Georgia. Almost overnight, they became one of the most talked-about couples in Hollywood. The media followed every move they made, turning their private life into a public spectacle. In 1994, they worked together again in the film The Getaway. This only strengthened the public idea that their real-life marriage and their on-screen roles were deeply connected. Cameras followed them everywhere they went. When their daughter, Ireland, was born on October 23, 1995, the attention doubled. Every walk through New York and every appearance in Los Angeles became a moment for photographers. Baldwin already had a deep dislike for paparazzi, but now it felt more personal. He was no longer just a famous actor being followed. He was a husband and a father trying to protect his family. Over time, that protective instinct turned into open conflict with the press. Each confrontation added another layer to his public image. He was seen as talented and successful, but also angry and unpredictable. While his personal life was intense and often chaotic, Baldwin was still chasing something big professionally. In the mid-1990s, he aimed for classic movie star status. In 1994, he starred in The Shadow, a stylish superhero-style film based on an old pulp character. The studio invested heavily in the project, hoping it would launch a major franchise. However, the movie did not perform as expected. It earned around $48 million worldwide, which was not enough to justify its large budget. The message from Hollywood was subtle but clear. Alec Baldwin was not becoming the next Tom Cruise. After that disappointment, his career path began to change. He starred in films like The Juror in 1996 and The Edge in 1997, but something was different. He was no longer the obvious first choice to lead big blockbuster movies. Supporting roles started to appear more often, and ensemble casts replaced films built entirely around him. Just 4 years after carrying The Hunt for Red October in 1990, his hold on box office power had weakened. That loss affected him deeply and pushed him toward darker, riskier projects. Some of those choices worked, but many did not. One particular risk hurt more than the others. Around 2001, Baldwin poured his energy and passion into a film called The Devil and Daniel Webster, which was later renamed Shortcut to Happiness. This project was deeply personal to him. He directed the film and starred in it, alongside Anthony Hopkins and Jennifer Love Hewitt. He saw it as an artistic statement and a turning point in his career. Instead, everything fell apart. The film's main investor, Jed Baron, was charged in a federal bank fraud case. The financing collapsed, and the unfinished film ended up locked away as evidence in court rather than being shown to audiences. Years went by as lawyers fought over ownership. When the film finally surfaced in 2007, Baldwin barely recognized it. He removed his name as director and replaced it with a fake one, quietly admitting that the dream behind the project was dead. At the same time, his personal life was falling apart. In January 2001, Kim Basinger filed for divorce. What followed was not a quiet separation but a painful and public custody battle over their daughter. When the divorce was finalized on September 3, 2002, the emotional damage had already been done. Baldwin later said he spent more than $1 million trying to stay close to his child. This included legal fees, constant flights, and even buying a home in California just to remain nearby. In his 2008 book, A Promise to Ourselves, he described feeling slowly erased from his daughter's life by the legal system itself. Anger built over time, but so did sadness and hopelessness. Everything exploded in April 2007. During a scheduled phone call that his daughter missed, Baldwin left a voicemail. Ireland was only 11 years old at the time. His words were harsh and deeply hurtful. Within days, the message was leaked and spread everywhere. Television shows, radio stations, and websites replayed it endlessly. What should have remained a private family moment turned into worldwide humiliation. In May 2007, a judge temporarily suspended Baldwin's visitation rights. Baldwin later admitted that the fallout from this incident pushed him into depression and dark thoughts. Almost overnight, he became a public joke. He was labeled the angry father and the out-of-control celebrity. This was not the first time his temper had made headlines. Back in October 1995, just days after his daughter was born, Baldwin was arrested after striking a photographer outside his home. In 2012, he was photographed pinning another photographer against a car in New York. In 2013, a shoving incident caught on video led to the cancellation of his MSNBC talk show after only 5 episodes. In 2014, he was arrested again after arguing with police over riding his bike the wrong way down a street. Each incident added to the same story in the public mind. Alec Baldwin could not control his anger. Late-night comedians turned it into material. Jokes about his voicemail and skits about his rage became common. Even when he won awards, the praise often came with laughter that carried an edge. The joke was no longer about the characters he played. It was about him as a person. And yet, right in the middle of this personal and public collapse, something unexpected happened. In October 2006, Baldwin debuted as Jack Donnery on the television show 30 Rock. The timing was almost cruel. His real life was falling apart, but on screen, he found a role that fit him perfectly. Jack Donnery was rich, powerful, loud, confident, and quietly damaged. Baldwin leaned into the character completely. He took everything people thought they knew about him and turned it into sharp, self-aware comedy. Over 139 episodes, Jack Donnery became one of the most memorable characters in television history. The awards followed quickly. Baldwin won 2 Emmy Awards, 3 Golden Globes, and 7 Screen Actors Guild Awards for the role. At the same time, he became a regular presence on Saturday Night Live. Over the years, he hosted the show 17 times. In 2016, his impression of Donald Trump became a cultural phenomenon. It dominated headlines, angered a sitting president, and earned Baldwin yet another Emmy. Television didn't just revive his career. It reshaped his image. Film roles during this period also showed a wide range. In The Cooler in 2003, Baldwin played a violent casino boss and earned an Academy Award nomination. In It's Complicated in 2009, he played a nervous and awkward romantic lead who hid under tables. He appeared in serious films like The Departed, lent his voice to animated movies, and worked in European comedies. Slowly, the story around him began to change. He was no longer just the angry man from the tabloids. He was a talented actor who had survived his own chaos. In August 2011, Alec Baldwin met Aloria Thomas in a New York restaurant. At first, it seemed like a casual meeting, but it quickly became something much bigger. Within weeks, they were living together in Greenwich Village, moving fast and building an intense life together. By April 2012, they were engaged. On June 30th of that same year, they were married at St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in New York City. The wedding was attended by famous friends, including Tina Fey, Jimmy Fallon, and Woody Allen. Everything happened quickly, but at the time it felt like forward momentum rather than disorder. Then the children began to arrive, one after another, until time itself seemed to blur. Carmen was born in August 2013. Raphael followed in June 2015. Leonardo arrived in September 2016. Romeo was born in May 2018. Eduardo came in September 2020. Lucia arrived in February 2021. Finally, Aloria was born in September 2022. 7 children in 9 years. Baldwin embraced this new identity publicly. He spoke often about diapers, school runs, and bedtime routines, presenting himself as proof that the wild and angry man people once knew was gone. In interviews and on social media, he described his life as calmer and softer, almost domestic. By June 2024, he even agreed to film a reality show for TLC called The Baldwins. The show focused entirely on their crowded Manhattan home and their daily family life. It was a public declaration that this version of his life was real, settled, and meant to last. But the image Alec Baldwin tried to present never fully matched what people continued to see outside the walls of his home. Even after 30 Rock turned him into one of the most loved figures on television, the old anger never completely disappeared. Many people still remembered the voicemail from 2007, the one where he screamed at his then 11-year-old daughter and called her a rude and thoughtless little pig. That recording spread everywhere and temporarily cost him his visitation rights. No amount of later success could fully erase it from the public memory. In June 2012, only weeks before his wedding to Aloria, photographers captured him shoving New York Daily News photographer Marcus Santos outside the Marriage License Bureau in Manhattan. A year later, in November 2013, another incident pushed his reputation even further downhill. Video surfaced of Baldwin using an anti-gay slur toward a photographer. As a result, MSNBC suspended him and then dropped him entirely. His talk show, Up Late with Alec Baldwin, was cancelled after just 5 episodes. The message was hard to ignore. No matter how many photos showed him smiling with his children, his temper around cameras remained dangerously short. Then, in December 2020, everything shifted again, this time through his wife. Aloria Baldwin became the center of a major online controversy. People accused her of spending nearly a decade presenting herself as a Spanish woman named Aloria instead of Hillary Haywood Thomas, a white woman born and raised in Boston. Old video clips resurfaced showing her speaking with a heavy Spanish accent during television appearances. A segment from the Today Show went viral where she appeared to forget the English word for cucumber. A Vanity Fair España profile from 2012 that described her as being born in Mallorca was quietly corrected years later. Reporters uncovered school records proving she attended high school in Massachusetts under the name Hillary. Business Insider published a detailed timeline showing how her background seemed to shift depending on the situation. Slowly, Alec Baldwin was pulled into the controversy as well. Interviews resurfaced where he referred to her as being from Spain. The internet treated the entire situation like a mystery it was determined to solve, tearing apart glossy magazine stories and public appearances piece by piece. At the same time, Baldwin was becoming something else entirely, A political lightning rod. A longtime Democrat and board member of People for the American Way, he grew especially visible between 2016 and 2020. His portrayal of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live dominated headlines and won him another Emmy, while also angering a sitting president. He hosted the reboot of Match Game and continued his WNYC podcast, Here's the Thing, which launched in 2011 and ran for more than 150 episodes. He interviewed politicians, artists, and public figures, speaking openly about culture and politics. In April 2018, he joined Alyssa Milano and Amy Schumer to help launch the Nora campaign, aimed at weakening the NRA after mass shootings such as Parkland, Columbine, and Sandy Hook. His voice was loud and sharp. To supporters, he was brave and outspoken. To critics, he was arrogant and unbearable. Either way, every controversy around him now exploded into something much bigger than before. Then came October 21, 2021. It was just before 1:48 in the afternoon on the set of the low-budget Western film Rust, being shot at Bonanza Creek Ranch near Santa Fe, New Mexico. Alec Baldwin, then 63 years old, was rehearsing a scene inside a small wooden church. He was not only the star of the film but also one of its producers. The movie had a budget of under $7 million and was scheduled to be shot in just 21 days, a tight and stressful timeline. The scene itself was simple. Baldwin sat in a church pew, practicing a cross-draw motion with a Colt .45 revolver. He was aiming toward the camera for a close-up shot. Moments earlier, Assistant Director David Halls had handed him the gun and announced it was a cold gun, meaning it was supposed to contain no live ammunition and no blanks. But when Baldwin pulled the gun during rehearsal, it fired. The sound was not what anyone expected. A live round struck 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins in the chest. The bullet passed through her body and then hit director Joel Souza in the shoulder as he stood behind her watching a monitor. They were standing less than 2 feet from the muzzle. Hutchins said she could not feel her legs and collapsed. Souza staggered backward, bleeding. At first, some crew members thought it was a misfire involving a blank. Then they saw blood. Jackets and rags were pressed against wounds as panic spread. Medics were called immediately. A helicopter rushed Hutchins to the University of New Mexico Hospital in Albuquerque, where she was pronounced dead. Souza survived his injuries. By that evening, sheriff's deputies had locked down the set, and the story became global news. As investigators searched the scene, they discovered something even more disturbing. Live ammunition, 6 or 7 rounds, was found mixed in with dummy rounds and blanks in belts, boxes, and carts. Live ammo should never be present on a movie set under any circumstances. A supplier later suggested that a batch labeled as dummy rounds may have mistakenly included real bullets. Investigators made it clear that this was an unthinkable failure, especially on a rushed, low-budget production where crew members had already complained days earlier about unsafe firearm handling. The irony was impossible to ignore. Baldwin had publicly criticized the NRA. He supported anti-gun campaigns and had once said he could not imagine doing another movie involving firearms. Now his name was permanently tied to one of the most shocking on-set deaths in Hollywood history. From that moment, his late career reinvention collapsed. Lawsuits followed quickly. Criminal charges followed as well. In January 2023, Baldwin was charged with involuntary manslaughter. The charge was later dropped, then brought back. In January 2024, a grand jury indicted him again. Baldwin insisted publicly that he never pulled the trigger, claiming he only cocked the hammer and that the gun fired on its own. Prosecutors argued that basic safety rules had been ignored. Forensic reports suggested the trigger had to be pulled for the gun to fire. The case moved slowly and painfully toward trial. Meanwhile, the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was convicted in March 2024 and sentenced to 18 months in prison, the maximum penalty. The judge described the behavior on set as a reckless disregard for human life. She appealed, but her conviction stood. In July 2024, Baldwin's trial finally began. Then, almost overnight, it collapsed. His defense team revealed that prosecutors had failed to disclose key ammunition evidence. The judge ruled that the misconduct was severe. The case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it could never be refiled. Baldwin slumped at the defense table, removed his glasses, and buried his face in his hands before embracing a lawyer. He had been facing the same 18-month sentence Gutierrez-Reed received. In an instant, that threat disappeared. But the story did not end there. Civil lawsuits continued. The Hutchins family settled one wrongful death case, while others dragged on. In January 2025, Baldwin filed a malicious prosecution lawsuit against prosecutors and investigators, accusing them of targeting him instead of focusing on how live ammunition ended up on set. By mid-2025, Baldwin spoke publicly about how deeply the ordeal had changed him. He said he spent years waking up expecting another subpoena or accusation. He admitted that the dismissal of the case did not feel like a victory. It felt like escape. Still, many people remained unconvinced. His refusal to say he pulled the trigger left doubts hanging in the air. And now, whenever Alec Baldwin's career is discussed, it almost always begins with October 21, 2021. Not with Jack Donnery. Not with awards or comedy or redemption. The question lingers quietly but heavily in every retrospective. When people look at Alec Baldwin now, do they see the actor who once made them laugh, or do they see the producer holding a gun on a set where a cinematographer lost her life?